Good morning. Good morning and welcome to First Unitarian Universalist Church of Nashville. My name is Jay Tiefenbrunn and I'm very pleased to be your Director of Music Ministries. I'd like to invite you to join me in singing this morning with Come Thou Font of Every Blessing, number 126 in the gray hymnal. Hymn number 126, Come Thou Font of Every Blessing. We're going to play it with a little rhythm. It's going to be a lot of fun. Please rise in body or in spirit as you're so moved and join in the singing. Come thou font of every blessing, tune our hearts to sing thy praise. Streams of mercy, never ceasing, all our songs of loudest praise. What a hope of perfection fills our hearts with joy and love. Teach us ever to be faithful, may we still thy goodness prove. Come thou fount of every vision, fill our eyes to perfect love. See the lion and the young lamb dwell together in thy home. Hear the cries of mortal silence, feel our love like no sun. When we all serve one another, and our heaven is begun. Come thou fount of inspiration, turn our lives to higher ways. Lift our gloom and desperation, show the brightness of this day. Help us find ourselves together, never answer our love. While the halo font of justice burn me bearers and above. Oh, good morning. Our next hymn is number 44. We sing of golden mornings. Hymn number 44. We sing of golden mornings, we sing of sparkling seas, of prairies, valleys, mountains, and stately forest trees. We sing of flashing sunshine and life-bestowing rain, of birds among the branches and springtime come again. We sing of courageous, my youthful eager mind. We sing of hopes undaunted, of friendly ways and kind. We sing of roses waiting beneath the deep piled snows. We sing we earth's great splendor, whose beauty round us grows. And our third song this morning is Amazing Grace, number 205. Hymn number 205, Amazing Grace. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a soul like me. Good morning. Please take a moment and greet your neighbors.
Day breaks on our gratitude for family and friends, for the freedom to find our own truth, for the company of those who gather here, and for the promises we offer one another. Let the light of the day bring the grace into our faith and into our lives.
So come into this place that we make holy by our presence. Come in with all your strengths and vulnerabilities, fears and anxieties, loves and hopes. For here you need not hide, nor pretend, nor be anything other than who you are and who you are called to be. Come into this place where we can touch and be touched. Gotta ask first, though. Heal and be healed. Forgive and be forgiven. Come into this place where the ordinary is sanctified, the human against all evidence is celebrated, and the compassionate is expected. Come into this place. Together we make it a holy place. The story I'm going to tell today was told to me by Todd Tuttle. He and his partner for decades, Mark Adams, have been ministering to GLBT youth in evangelical colleges, an interesting ministry, thinking of them as in a closet that they don't need to be in. And so once upon a time in a land where all the people were dogs, we have one people dog right here sitting in the third row, there was a little puppy named Spot, and Spot's parents named him Spot because he had the most beautiful spots, and they lived in a town where all the dogs had spots, but they wanted Spot to grow up to have the most beautiful, best spots of all. And so he wanted so much to please his parents, and he tried really hard to be the best at everything. Well, he did notice some sad things about his parents, even though they were very loving to him. For instance, they would make really nasty jokes about dogs that didn't have spots, like this dog here. And they also, he saw one day a dog without spots in Spottsville and saw his father kick dirt at that dog and chase it away and said, "We don't like dogs with spots here." Well, this meant something to him because as he got older, his spots started to fade. It was like the darker hair started falling out, and he was really nervous. He would put paint on those spots to make them look as dark as they were. And when he took a bath, he would rub all the paint off to see what it looked like, to see maybe the spots were getting darker again, but they weren't. They were getting lighter until he had no spots at all. But he couldn't tell anybody. Because he knew how mean they'd be to him. So he kept painting on these spots. And he kind of felt bad because he was kind of lying, right? But at the same time, he knew he would feel worse if he told people. Well, one day, he was playing with his friend Fido, and they were playing by a river, and they heard this wild barking, "Help, help, I'm drowning." And they started to run to the river to jump in to save a dog out in the middle of the river who was really in trouble. And then Spot stopped. What would happen if he went in the river? Maybe his makeup would all come off, and then they would know he didn't have spots. So he just stood there. But Fido, thank goodness, went in and was able to pull the drowning dog to shore. And as the dog was catching his breath, Fido was looking at him and went, "Oh my gosh, you don't have spots. I shouldn't have saved you. I should have let you drown." Spot was so upset to hear his friend say that. And he didn't even think. He just said, "I'm going to show him." And he went in the water and he rubbed all the paint off of his body. And he came out. And Fido was shocked. You don't have spots either? You've been lying to me. I thought you were my friend. I'm never playing with you again. Well, Spot was upset. He just didn't know what to think. He ran right home without thinking, and as he ran into the door, his mother took one look at him and said, "Spot?" He says, "Yes, Mom, it's me." And she screamed, "Howl!" and just fainted right on the floor and made so much noise that the father came down and he said, "Spot, is that you?" "Yes, Papa, it's me." And he said, "You don't have spots. There, no son of mine doesn't have spots. You are never welcome here again." And he shut the door right in his own son's face. Spot was so sad. He just ran and ran and ran. And then he just so tired, he just kind of wandered blindly along. He didn't know what to do. He felt terrible, but a little part of him felt kind of good. Matter of fact, a little part of him felt kind of free because he told the truth. And he was like confused by that. He didn't know what to do with feeling so good and so bad at the same time. And then he heard somebody calling to him, "Hey, you dog, you." And he looked behind the bush, and there was the dog that Fido had saved from drowning. And he came out and he said, "Hi, my name is Buster, and I just want you to know that you jumping in the water and letting everybody see you without your spots was the bravest thing I ever saw anyone do. And I want to thank you for doing that, because I know you did that to help me." And Spot just said, "Yes, but, I got kicked out of my house." Told him the whole story. And Buster said, "Well, you know, I live at the top of that mountain over there in Boneberry. And we have dogs that have spots and dogs that don't have spots, and you would be welcome there. Nobody's gonna mind. Matter of fact, my parents would let you live with us because you helped save me." And so he went up to the top of the mountain to live. And he lived there several years. He really learned to love his new family. He learned to love the people there, and people there learned to love him. It's not to say he didn't miss his parents a lot. Well, one day, well, it wasn't really one day, it was one whole season. It just started to rain, and it didn't let up. It rained and rained and rained, and it started to flood in the towns at the bottom of the mountain. In the valley, they were fine up in Bonesberry. But in Barksville, it became dangerous. People's houses were starting to float away, and people had nowhere to go, and they wanted help. So they said, "Well, we better send somebody up to Bonesberry and get help." So a couple of dogs went up there, and they went and said, "Help us, we're all drowning." And the dog people all gathered around and said, "We're not going to help you. You never help us. We've been down there. You always chase us away. If we don't have spots, you're really mean to us. Why should we help you?" And they were being kind of noisy and rude and nasty about it. You could understand. And Spot came trotting by, and he went up to see what was going on. And at first he kind of agreed with them, but then he looked at the dogs from Barksville, and he realized, oh my gosh, one of them is my old friend Fido. And he stood in front of everybody, and he said, "Okay, I really understand why you feel this way. I kind of feel this way too, but at the same time, I was born down in Barksville, and I really love some of the people down there. I think we should help them." Because he'd built all this respect over the last few years, they agreed, and they went to help. Well, a couple months later, the floods had subsided. The dogs in Barksville were feeling safe again, and they wanted to thank the dogs in Bonesberry for helping them. And so they invited them all down for a big thank you party. Well, Spot was really anxious, but he went down. He thought, "I wonder if I'll be welcomed." And it turned out his parents were really anxious too. They were wondering what would happen when they saw their son that they'd kicked out. But when they saw each other, the parents ran up to him and said, "We are so sorry. We are so sorry, Spot. We were wrong. You're the same Spot that we always loved, and we ask you to forgive us." And, well, Spot still loved them too, and so he forgave them. But he realized that the beliefs of the dogs in his town had changed, and that made him very happy that no matter how hard it was, that he had told the truth about himself. And our story is over, And I believe, Karina's going to take over. Take over, Karina.
We'd like to invite the kids to attend their RE classes and send them off by singing the Children's Blessing in the back of the gray hymnal.
Good morning. My name is Roddy Biggs, and I'm a co-chair of the Social Justice Committee, and it is my pleasure to welcome you here in the sanctuary this morning and to those worshiping with us online. In order to reach a wider community than those physically present with us on Sunday mornings, our services are live streamed on YouTube and Facebook. Joys and concerns are not live streamed or recorded. Let me remind you to please silence your cell phones. As Unitarian Universalist, our spiritual path varies, but in this congregation, we have made a covenant together. We affirm our interdependence, celebrate our differences, and work for justice. We deepen our relationships as we create a compassionate, welcoming community, nurture spiritual growth, and act on our values in the broader world. I want to extend a special welcome to visitors worshiping with us this morning. We ask that you wear the paper name tags, as it helps us identify you as someone who we would like to meet. If you are seeking a spiritual home, we hope that you may find it here. Whether you are new to Unitarian Universalism or visiting from another UU congregation, we invite you to stop by the welcome table after the service to have your questions answered. People become members of this congregation by signing the membership book and by supporting the church with their time and finances. If you are considering joining the church, please speak to our assistant minister, Denise Couch. Following the service, we hope you will enjoy coffee and fellowship in the social area, where you will also find information about current opportunities for engagement and reflection. There are a number of announcements in the weekly bulletin, which I hope you will take home and read. Here is one more. The time has come to consider what we want to do with our church building moving forward. We ask that you look in the weekly newsletter and start thinking about what to do moving forward, and to come prepared for January 27th after the second service, where we will officially put it to a vote. Thank you.
I'd like to invite you now to finish arriving in this sanctuary, to take a deep breath and know that you are part of a gathered community. And as you settle, think back over the last few hours or days, week maybe, and perhaps there is a profound joy or sorrow, something that concerns you that you would like to mark here among this community. If you would like to do so, our lay minister, Kathy Chang, will help you place a stone in this bowl of water to mark your joy or sorrow. And if you would like it to be spoken to the congregation, there are yellow slips of paper on the pew in front of you. If you would write that down legibly, if possible, Kathy and I will read those. You can hand me the slip as you come forward. holding these joys, these gratitudes, these concerns and sorrows, as well as all of those that lie still in our hearts unspoken, let us join in a spirit of prayer. Spirit of life and love, the holder of all joys and all sorrows, the witness to all conversations, we are grateful for the chance to be together, the chance to share the moments of our lives, both large and small. May our being together this morning make us people of deeper compassion and more courageous conversations. May this and much more come to us through a participation in this community, this beloved community, and may we always reach for the more and more courage to grow in our ability to be with each other and in the world beyond our walls. Blessed be. Amen. This is the time in our service when we mark our gratitude by sharing, and the ushers in a few minutes will bring the offering bowls around. If you are in the sanctuary, you can find directions for online giving as well in your order of service. If you're joining us online, there are always directions available for donating electronically on our website. As you all may know, the congregation shares a portion of the offering every single Sunday with an organization that furthers our values and mission in the world beyond our congregation. The recipient of the Share the Plate for January is our Committee for the Larger Faith, which is responsible for engagement with the wider denomination. Usually I say you can read more about it in the order of service, but today we're very fortunate to have members of the Committee for the Larger Faith, Richard Byrd and Lois Wagner, who will tell us more about it themselves.
Morning. My name's Lois Wagner, and I'm a member of the Committee for the Larger Faith. Our congregation is one of over 1,000 congregations on every continent around the globe, except Antarctica, that form the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations. Our local committee is the way our congregation engages this larger faith community for information exchange and for calls to action on a nationwide and worldwide scale. We have a number of specific charges, but perhaps the most important is sending delegates from our church to the UUA General Assembly, which will be held in June this year in Spokane, Washington. Your Share the Plate dollars will help us defray the costs incurred by our delegates who attend this meeting. Please visit our table in the Fellowship Hall on the 27th of this month to learn more about how this committee serves our congregation. Thank you. Richard?
As UUs, we often feel pride for our involvement in the civil rights movement. We marched, we organized, we protested. However, when a movement within the Unitarian Universalist Association toward black empowerment and self-determination formed during the racially tense time of the late 1960s to address the silencing and marginalization of black UUs, the commitment that was made by the association went unfulfilled and promises were broken. Fast forward to the summer of 2015, following the movement for Black Lives convening in Cleveland, Ohio, when a group of black UUs together formed Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism, or BLUE. BLUE is an independent, black-led organization drawing and building upon the important work that was begun in the late 1960s. It provides ministry for and by black Unitarian Universalists while also working to expand the role and visibility of black UUs within our faith. Imagine what our faith would look like if we upheld and centered the history, the perspectives, the voices, and the leadership of Black Lives of Unitarian Universalists. In October 2016, the UUA Board of Trustees made a bold $5.3 million commitment to fund black leaders in Unitarian Universalism in support of our ministry to black identified UUs. A goal has been set that at least $1 million of this commitment would come from congregational contributions. The UUA Board made this commitment with the understanding that it is for black Unitarian Universalists to determine for themselves what is needed and how it will be accomplished. A portion of your contribution will go to support BLUE. Together, we can collectively work to dismantle white supremacy and amend a long-broken promise to the Black lives within Unitarian Universalism. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Chad Wood, and I'm the worship associate today. I'm going to be doing a reading from Coming Out Through Fire, Surviving the Trauma of Homophobia by Leanne McCall-Tigert. Because our sexuality and our sexual orientation are deeply interwoven within and emerge from our core sense of ourselves, To be shamed for one's sexual orientation is to be shamed for one's very self. Thus one feels bad, deep within, perhaps unredeemable. This points not only to the absurdity, but also the impossibility of the all too often touted phrase, love the sin but hate the sinner. Our sexual orientation, whether gay or straight, is part of the very fiber of our being, as is a piece of yarn to a well-crafted sweater. How does one love the sweater but hate the yarn from which it is made? Or love the yarn but hate the sweater from which the yarns form? To destroy the yarn, one must destroy the sweater. If one destroys the sweater, one destroys the yarn also. To be hated for all or in part, in one form or another, is to be shamed and possibly destroyed. To hate and shame and destroy the sin of who we are and whom we love is to hate and shame and attempt to destroy us. I would like to call you into a place of meditation following
Our song is in Singing the Journey, the Turquoise hymnal, number 1002, Comfort Me. And I'll line out the words so that you can just sing. If you'd like to rise in body or in spirit, you are welcome to. If you prefer to sit and sing in meditation, that is also welcome. Comfort Me, number 1002. Comfort me,
mystic Sufi, Still Say Nothing, and then followed by, I would like to invite you into a moment of silent meditation. Yesterday I went completely crazy. Love saw me. Don't wail, don't tear your clothing, I've come, he said. Oh, love, I cried out, I'm not afraid of anything. But nothing exists, he said, so don't even talk about it. I'll whisper a secret in your ear. Just answer me by shaking your head, but don't talk. A moon-like soul has appeared on the way to the heart. The journey to the heart is so gratifying, but don't say anything about it to anyone. This time I asked the heart, oh heart, what kind of moon is that? He called back to me, this is nothing. This is not something that you can understand with your mind, so don't say a word. So maybe.
worship associates started talking about the theme of grace, immediately Chad said, we can't talk about grace without talking about sin. And I knew exactly what he meant and thought about it a lot vacation week, the week between Christmas and New Year's, because for me, vacation week was all about the band Queen. So let me explain how this relates. I walked into my son's house and he goes, Mom, the movie we all want to see together this year is Bohemian Rhapsody. And I could see the 11-year-old was working away on the piano, learning Bohemian Rhapsody and how to play it. And he said, don't you remember we watched Live Aid together in 85, 86? And he was 10 years old. I don't remember. I do remember he was all about the police and Madonna, not about Queen. But I'm not a fan of anything. So I know there's real Queen fans here. So I know I'm not going to try to talk about their music, but I listened to every Queen album from start to finish that week. That was the soundtrack of our Christmas holiday, and it was really enjoyable. My son sees this as PG-9 family music. That was good music, every kind of rock and roll influence. He pointed them out, so I had a real tutorial. But seeing the movie for me was incredibly, took me back to like 1975 when its band forms, and reminded me how very specific concepts of sin and grace ruled my world. So in the beginning of the movie, you got Freddie Mercury. He's this young man. He's from an immigrant family. He's Parsi, which means he was Zoroastrian religion, immigrants. And he's trying to figure out in England who he is as an individual, also as an artist. And he joins up with a group of straight white boys, and they form Queen. And I automatically thought of 1975, when I had 3 friends disappear from my lives because they went into a closet. They disappeared from my lives at that time because none of us knew enough about human sexuality to really think about how do we explore who we really are and our sexual orientation. And so all 3 of these friends of mine were married. 2 of them had children, just like Freddie Mercury got married, because who knows what the options are. And then when they realized that they were attracted to people of their own sex, the only way they thought they could deal with it and explore that was to disappear from straight society, to go into the closet. Now, the closet in those days was deep, and it was highly segregated. Highly segregated. So you see Freddie Mercury trying to figure out how to explore his sexuality. There were very few options to do that and still remain in straight society. So that exploration and that remaining in straight society. So my friends did the classic, went to the big city, and thank God he stayed connected to me. But 2 of my friends, and honest to goodness, this is the truth, both of their names are Grace. My 2 Graces, they fell in love with each other, and they disappeared. We didn't know where they went. Their husbands, kind of probably knew, and so the rumors would go around town, but we really didn't know until one of the husbands kidnapped one of the children, brought it home, and one of the Graces had to come back and go to court. And of course, to fight to get custody of her child. And of course, she had to represent herself as the straightest, most middle-class looking mother in the world to get that custody. And at least then we knew they had gone 3,000 miles away where they lived. Now, in the movie, you can slowly see how the tension between those two worlds of the straight world and the gay closet started to affect the band's relationship. I only know if this is from the movie. I don't know if this is true. It was clear that as Freddie Mercury became more and more involved in what was called the club scene, which was a gay scene, which was isolated from the straight scene, and he wanted to keep his privacy, and I think he wanted to do it because he wanted to stay in the mainline world, where there were gay and straight people, where there was actually integration. At the same time, you could see he had this longing for what, as they matured, his other bandmates had, which were settled relationships, marriage, children. And he expresses that in the movie. This kind of radical separation of people who cared for each other was based on a concept of sin and grace that Unitarian Universalists rebelled against 1,000 years ago. Okay? So I want to explain to you the concept of sin and grace that caused what we're going to call the sin of the closet, and the concept of grace that reinforced that, and then tell you what Unitarian Universalists our theology has developed. And one of the ways that Chad and I got more deeply into this theology was a book by Patrick Cheng called From Sin to Amazing Grace, Discovering the Queer Christ. So it's a very Christian book by a Christian immigrant queer Episcopal priest who has done a lot of theology. And it was amazing to me how what he said overlapped with our theology. So I just want to honor how he taught it, because it's very helpful. What he talks about is that most of us in our culture, whether think we believe it or not, have been taught a very legalistic view of sin and grace that was developed by Augustine, who was a theologian in the early Christian church in Rome. It was very much a Roman theologian when the Roman Empire and the Roman church were developing orthodoxy. And he defined sin and grace in very legalistic terms. Very simply, he took the mythology of Adam and Eve, which has been, interpreted a million different ways, and he said, okay, Adam and Eve committed a crime when Eve ate the apple, and that was the sin. So he totally equated crime with sin, okay? And then they were punished. So God was the judge, and he punished them. And how did he punish them? He punished them by pain in childbirth and death. So those are things that apparently everybody experiences. They were born in pain, and they die. And he then said, every child is born a criminal. He didn't say that. He said born in sin. But that's what he meant. Every child is born a criminal because this crime is passed on through sex. And he said that. It's passed on through sex. So sex itself is dangerous, but we have to have it for having children, so that's the only time you can do it, basically. That's what he said. But, so your child is not born innocent. Your child is born a criminal. Now, since everybody is born a criminal and everybody has to be punished for anything they do. That's a crime. And there is nothing you can do about it because God is all-powerful, was his theology. So the only way you could be released from punishment was through God's mercy. In other words, you're a criminal, but I'm going to be merciful, and I'm not going to punish you anymore. And there was nothing you could do about that. God's mercy was totally up to God. And so the concept of grace became this thing that you had nothing to do with. It was something that, happened by accident. It was a gift. I'm thinking, what, some kind of gift? Because it starts off saying how bad you are. So that was not the only Christian theology. Indeed, when Augustine started writing about this, people came to debate him. And my favorite debater, who I thought had it all right, was Pelagius, who was a Celtic Christian monk. He traveled all the way to Rome to have a debate with him because he was didn't like this point of view. And what he argued was that's ridiculous. People are born in the likeness of God. Creation is good. Yes, Adam and Eve were young. They had just been created. They made mistakes. Sin just means missing the mark. You make a mistake. We learn from our mistakes. We help each other love and learn from our mistakes, and that's grace. That's grace. That relationship, loving relationships that help us grow spiritually our whole lives. Now, that idea didn't disappear ever, ever, ever. The Eastern Orthodox Church still teaches that. Now, they have some other ideas that you might not agree with, but they still teach that. They call it deification, that we're all born spiritually in the likeness of God, and we can mature and become more like God as we grow. Well, the Unitarian teaching is almost exactly that. The Unitarian teaching in classic Unitarianism was we're born with a seed of divine in us, because we're born in the likeness of God, and it is our job to cultivate and nurture that seed to become more loving, to become more just. They called it building good character. I'm very into building good character, but that's part of nurturing that seed. And you did that in relationship with other people. Okay? So, Freddie Mercury, right? Let's go back to Freddie. Let's go back to my friends, in Grace. They learned, they matured, they learned who they were. They learned that they were not only their sexuality, although their sexuality was an important part of them. They learned that they could have the courage not just to come out, but to leave the closet as an isolation. They didn't leave their people. They still had strong relationships with people in the GLBT community, but they invited everyone in to be integrated together, gay and straight. So Grace and Grace moved back to their hometown. They became, reconciled with their parents, reconciled with the ex-husbands. Somebody made a movie about them when they got married, one of the first couples to get married in Massachusetts, so they got a movie too. And Freddie Mercury, who knows exact how it all happened. They make it sound like it all happened in one day, which we know it didn't happen in one day. But he also reconciled with the band so they could play together, and each of them really continued bringing all that they were as individuals, and then they were a wonderful collaborative team working together, and they represented that so beautifully, maybe in many ways, but certainly in the Live Aid concert. Here they were. You look at each one of them, they look like straight rock and roll white boys in different ways, each in their own way, and then now comes Freddie Mercury, dressed exactly like a hero in gay macho porn, with a muscle shirt And, well, it is. And he's got this band, and he's, with the sticking out. And they're beautiful together. What does it say to say, I am gay, and I am proud, and I am thrilled to be with my straight friends, working together, making amazing, amazing music together. And amazing dancing, by the way, together. Now, what did that mean to people seeing that representation of that integration, a creative, life-giving integration? It meant no matter who you are, no matter what closet you are in, be it what is your religion, what is your immigration status, what is your ethnicity that you're hiding, what is about being a woman that you don't want people to know, pantsuit nation, right? What is it that you are hiding about being too poor or not mainstream in any way? All of a sudden, all those people are invited in, in that millions of people watching them, saying, we are all part of the same human race, the same community together. We are integrated. What a grace that was. That was a grace for people to know that they are invited into relationship with the rest of the human race. So I know that everybody here, we all have those closets that we think we need to be in. We live in a society that, like any society, has a norm, and we think we need to live into that norm sometimes. And sometimes it's hard to be fully, totally who we are. And I'll tell you, the older you get, the more you want to be fully, totally who you are. You don't want to put up with any of that stuff anymore. And so, I want to ask you all today to think what has brought how you do grace. How do you offer that relational invitation to yourself and to others to be out in all the ways that are you, to be who you were born to be and develop, grow, mature into who you're called to be. I want to end with just one of the little inspirations I had this week. One of the senators who was sworn in this week was, is it Karina? It's Sinema. Kristen Sinema. Now, Kristen Sinema is the first out by senator. Okay? And there was a lot of buzz about what she wore because it was against the dress code of the Senate. What she wore, part of the dress code is that a woman should never have bare arms. So she had on this lovely little white pearl encrusted top, this kind of wiggle skirt, big flowers on it, very sparkly high heels, and this fake fur, of course, stole, and, Benny Boop waves with her dyed platinum hair, what we would call high femme. And she showed us you can be a woman in the Senate. You don't have to wear a pantsuit. You don't have to pretend you're a man. Oh, but she also had on those big glasses, so she, I'm a nerd. She knew how to represent her full self, or playfully, in public. That was a grace. It was a grace to every single person in America who is struggling with, how do I become more and more expressive in public of who I am while I'm trying to change the world, to have more grace. So I'm thanking her, I'm thanking all of you who have had that courage to become more fully yourself and invite others into it. May it be so.
I'm going to invite the members of choir who would like to help support me in leading you in singing our closing song, Quiet, which is in your order of service. This song by Milk and A.G. was used in the Women's March on Washington in 2016. Let's not be quiet anymore. Please rise in body or in spirit, and let's sing together.
The words the church is singing are found in the bottom of your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment.
These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Okay, and I'd like to close. Let's see. We make grace happen when we turn and move into relationships, opening our hearts from all that we are to all that is another person, the earth, or sounds of music. In turning, we feel a mutual contact, a reciprocal fullness of life between one active existence and another. We call this experience grace. In the free expression of a child, in the hug of a friend, in the music we sing together, in the strength of the winter trees, the Spirit of grace enters our bodies and renews our souls. As we leave this place today, may you remember you can make grace happen. May it be so.